our pal Jeff Speegle, longtime sports anchor at ABC 3340, to the show. And Jeff is joining us this morning in spite of a raspy voice. So we'll try not to keep you too long, Jeff. We appreciate it.
Thanks, Gary. I really appreciate it. It's a lot better than it was yesterday.
Well, good, man. I know what dealing with voice issues is like, and in this business, there's nothing worse, really. Hey, just your takeaways from the Citrus Bowl and the Outback Bowl. Let's begin with Alabama. I said this earlier on the show. It doesn't undo this season. Where Alabama's at, the history under Nick Saban, they played in 4 straight national championship games, all 5 playoffs, I think 7 of the last 10 national championship games overall. And to not be there and to be in the VRBO or the Verbo Citrus Bowl was a disappointment. Having said that, there was a perception when Alabama didn't make it into the BCS game or didn't make it into the playoff that they lose interest. That wasn't the case yesterday. You could sense it with the fact that only Terrell Lewis and Trayvon Diggs sat the game out. All those offensive guys played, and it was a tough first half, but in the second half, they seized control of the game and won it going away 35-16. I thought it was an impressive performance over a Michigan team that was motivated and looking for a signature-type win for Jim Harbaugh.
Yeah, I thought they really played well. I was especially impressed with Mac Jones and how well he played. I thought they were just on point. I mean, there were some defensive issues in the first half. They moved the ball on them pretty well. But I think as a whole, I mean, the offense from start to finish, I think, was pretty solid. And Mac was throwing the ball with confidence, leading that team with a great deal of confidence. And you could tell, especially, after they made some adjustments at halftime, that, I mean, they came out in the second half, and, as Nick Saban referred to the Bama factor, they wanted to come in and, get back to not only defeating opponents, but demoralizing them, and I think that's what they did to the Wolverines.
Indeed. You mentioned Mac Jones, 16 of 25, 327, 3 TDs, no picks, which was the big stat, because let's be honest, that's what did him in the Iron Bowl with the 2 pick sixes, because outside of that, he played brilliantly. We'll get to Auburn in a moment, but, Alabama, people forget, seemingly because they lost the game, they gashed that Auburn defense for 515 yards. But he did play terrific. Najee Harris, 24 carries, 136 yards, and 2 touchdowns. I think he's gone. Judy, 6 catches, 204, a career day and a touchdown. I think he's gone. But a lot of these other guys, it looks like are going to come back, and there's a possibility now. Again, I don't know for sure. You don't know for sure, but it seems to be trending in the direction of Tua Tagovailoa coming back. So my question is, Tua comes back, Mac Jones will be a 4th-year junior. What does this mean for Mac Jones? He's already graduated, so he could go into the portal and be a free agent and go anywhere he wants and be eligible immediately. If Tua announces he's coming back, what do you think this means for Mac Jones?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question, because yesterday after the game, I mean, Mac was talking about, wanting to get into the off season and, and work hard with these guys and, get ready for next year. And I don't know if he knows something that we don't, but earlier in the week he was talking about how
it's his team.
This is my team.
Yeah.
This is my team. And that's the way you want your quarterback to talk. But I mean, if Tua does come back, obviously Tua is, going to be the starter. I'm sure, as every coach says, the competition, will be open. No one's job is safe. But obviously, Tua will go back to number 1, and Mac will go back to number 2. And I don't know, after getting a taste of being a starter and knowing how well he can handle it, that I don't know if he would sit well with being a number 2 guy. So my guess would be, if Tua does come back, Mac would transfer.
Be interesting for sure. And I said this earlier, and you've kind of already, echoed it. With this portal, to some degree, especially for quarterbacks, it's a form of college free agency. If he goes into that portal with what he's accomplished at Alabama, particularly as a starter in these few games to end the season, Jeff, you and I know people are going to be lining up to get his phone number and get him on the phone. He'll have a lot of different schools, I have no doubt, that will say, listen, you come here, you're our starter, much like we saw with Burrow, much like we saw with Jalen Hurts and others. So I know Mac loves it here at Alabama, but he'll have some really good options, man.
Well, he really will, and I think one of the great things about that game yesterday was I love the way he plays. First of all, he throws a great ball. I mean, he led those receivers. He threw really good balls yesterday, and the has fun when he plays. I mean, and I love to see that. And the energy he shows on the field, and I think that's infectious. And I think people would be lining up to have him be their quarterback.
For Alabama, again, that victory yesterday does not undo the season. Alabama didn't make it into the playoff. They lost the 2 games that, I said the only 2 games they were capable of losing. I think the other 10 opponents, there's no way they could have lost those games with me at quarterback. They were that much better. But they did lose to LSU at home, and they lost to Auburn on the road. That doesn't undo it. But I do think it gives a really positive vibe for the program to win 11 straight games for 9 years in a row. They've won 10 or more for 12 straight. It is. Don't you think it is a shot in the arm? It's got nothing to do with what's going to happen in 2020, but don't you just think there's a better feel around the program now than if they would have lost that game?
Oh, I absolutely do. I don't think that's ever been done in the AP poll era, I think. So, I mean, that's very impressive. And, yeah, I mean, sometimes we devalue the bowl games, because of the playoff. But, man, if you go out and you play well, I mean, that can really, spur you on. It can give you kind of a carryover into the next season. And I don't know, maybe some guys that were on the fence, some of these juniors that were on the fence can kind of see, holy cow, why don't we come back and try to win bookend national championships, and because this class is going to go down. The class of 2017 is one of the best recruiting classes, maybe the best that Alabama's ever had, one of the best in college football. So it wouldn't surprise me if a lot of guys, as you said earlier, announces on Monday that, hey, we're coming back. We want to try to finish this thing out the right way and have bookend national championships. I think that would be a really cool thing to happen.
Indeed. When you look at next season for Alabama, and certainly if Tua comes back, I mean, that's just a cherry on top. It looks like some of these other juniors that were considering leaving, Ruggs, Leatherwood, others, Devontae Smith could come back as well. As I said, I think Judy and Najee Harris are gone. I still think Wills will probably go, but a number of them could come back if Tua leads the way. That does change the dynamic of this team, because if you just said halfway through the season, a lot of those guys I mentioned, you would just assume that they were going to go on and go to the NFL. If that happens, and even if Tua doesn't come back, well, what Mac Jones has shown, I'd said earlier this year that I didn't think Alabama, based on who they were going to be losing, would be a top 5 preseason pick next year. Certainly that will change. If those guys all come back, then Alabama's right back among the favorites to play for the national championship. Would you agree with that?
Oh, I would agree with that. I think, if Tua is gone and Mac, is back and he's the number 1 guy, I think at worst Alabama's preseason number 4, in the country. If Tua comes back, probably somewhere around number 2. So, yeah, I mean, I think the future's bright for this program. And the recruiting class they had, look, I mean, it's just going to be another year of reloading. And I think the guys, on the team who are coming back saw, the way they played yesterday, and that's what they want to get back to. They want to, as Nick Saban said yesterday, they want to get back to the culture of playing disciplined football, everybody doing their jobs, and just really, staying on point and seeing things through. And I think that game yesterday, I think, was huge in that regard.
Jeff, let's get to Auburn. Now, I was not in Orlando, so I watched the game yesterday at Billy's Sports Grill over in Northport, one of my great advertisers, and both games were on. And I had an Auburn, after the games were over, I had an Auburn fan come up to me and tap me on the shoulder and paid me a nice compliment. Said, hey, I really enjoy your segment with Brett Pritchard every week on the Auburn Report. You're the only, not many people in Tuscaloosa give Auburn, a segment. And he said, then the but came. He said, but you don't get it. You Alabama people don't get it. And I said, well, I'm not an Alabama person, but go ahead. He said, well, I heard you say that, we all should be ecstatic as Auburn fans to have Gus Malzahn because he's beaten Nick Saban 3 times. He's made it to national championship game. He won an SEC championship. But this today is a perfect example why we're not excited about Gus Malzahn, because this is typical Gus Malzahn. If I've ever seen it once, I've seen it again today, that he beats Alabama and then he loses. And then, of course, the Auburn fan was upset, but he thought clearly Auburn was a better team. But he's right to some degree. If you're not an Auburn person, you may not understand their frustration with a guy who's been good enough to beat Nick Saban 3 times, but hasn't won a national championship, which is now their goal. He did as a coordinator, but lost to Florida State, and continues to have seasons with 4 and 5 losses. And that game yesterday was a poor performance by Auburn, Jeff. They didn't even make it to 250 yards of total offense. I thought they got handled on the line of scrimmage, and I think most of us expected more from Auburn in this game against Minnesota coming off that Iron Bowl win. And once again, they lost.
Well, I think one of Gus's strengths is, when his back's up against the wall, he comes up with a pretty good performance, like the Iron Bowl, for example. Yesterday was a disappointment. You got to be able to run the football. And I kind of agree with something that Ryan Brown said. If Auburn can't run the ball up the middle, it's like they're just going to struggle, and they couldn't do it yesterday. And Minnesota's defense, I think, kind of flew under the radar in terms of fans around here. Everyone in the Big Ten knew how well they could play defense. In fact, total defense-wise, I think they might have been ranked above Auburn. But I think the thing that really stunned me was how Minnesota just gashed Auburn's defense. And Tyler Johnson just had a field day, receiving, and they ran the ball pretty well. And I was just amazed that they ran or they put up so much total offense against Auburn as they did. To me, the offensive numbers were disappointing, but the way they handled that Auburn defense, was even more disappointing, to me, if I'm looking at that from an Auburn fan perspective.
I'm glad you said that, because you and I are gonna clash a little bit here, because I have you on this program a lot, and I've constantly heard from you about this great Auburn defense all year. Yeah, and I've heard it from others. I think it's one of the most overrated units in the history of college football. I do. I think the numbers will back me up. You look at the numbers; their numbers are no better than Alabama's, and they had a great performance against LSU that they milked for the entire season. They're a good defense. But you said you're surprised yesterday. Well, they got gashed in the Iron Bowl to the tune of 515 yards. It was overshadowed by the fact that they won the game and Mac Jones threw 2 pick sixes. But they got gashed. Absolutely. And if Alabama had gotten that ball back at the end of the game, I have no doubt they would have put the ball at least in field goal position for Bulovas to give him another opportunity to miss a field goal. A lot of teams move the ball on them. And Derek Brown and Marlon Davidson are really good players, and they were a good defense. But people talked about them like they were the 85 Bears or 2011 Alabama. I never saw that. I saw them, this is a 4-loss team that was a good defensive team, but this stuff about, they're incredible, nobody can move the ball. If you watch the Alabama tape again, Derek Brown was on his back for 3 quarters. Deontay Brown handled him. Now, he made some plays in the fourth quarter. Give him credit. He's a dynamic player. But this assumption that this Auburn team was one of the great defenses in SEC history, I never saw it. I never saw that, Jeff. And I'm wondering why you and others, so many of people out there in our business, just crown this as one of the great defenses in SEC football history.
Well, I don't think I said they were one of the greatest.
No, you didn't, but
in SEC football history. But they were a really, really good defense. And that, the Iron Bowl, look, they were going against one of the best offenses in the SEC.
With a backup quarterback.
A backup quarterback who could start at a lot of other SEC schools. There are a lot of other SEC schools that would love to have Mac Jones as a starting quarterback. Alabama had a great offense. They had a great offensive plan. And they ran the ball at will and ran plays at will against Auburn. But, I think overall, this Auburn defense and Derek Brown is going to go down, I think, as, one of the best to ever play at Auburn. But, yesterday, not a good performance. The Iron Bowl, not a great performance. If I'm looking at it from an Auburn fan's perspective, though, yesterday's game just would stun me more so than the Iron Bowl, because I knew what Alabama had coming in. But if I'm looking at Minnesota, I'm looking at, we should be able to handle these guys. That was not the case yesterday at all.
Well, I'm not. I don't want to diminish. Auburn had some really good players, and I think Brown and Davidson. Brown's a top 10 NFL pick, and Davidson's a good player. But I think I'm with you. I think they were good defense. I just think somehow, somewhere along the line, probably because they held LSU to 23 points. And statistically, I look at the final statistics following the bowl game, and they're sixth in the SEC in team defense, behind Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Kentucky, and Missouri. And that's, in scoring defense, Alabama actually finished ahead of Auburn. So just some food for thought. And I guess my point, Jeff, is people talked about this Alabama defense, and rightfully so. It gave up a lot of yards and points. As one of the worst in Alabama history under Nick Saban, and statistically, they're as good or better than Auburn. And we talked about this Auburn defense as one of the best. So it's just odd to me in that regard. All right, we got to get you off the air. You got to rest your voice. But going forward, and of course, I know we got Indiana and Tennessee, but the one big game is a week from Monday night in New Orleans in the Mercedes-Benz Superdome with LSU and Clemson. And LSU, man, what can you say? They could, if they win this game, make a claim as being the greatest college football team in history based on who they played and beat. And then you got Clemson, and you and I've laughed before. I've made fun of Dabo-isms, but there's something to it. When he said after the Fiesta Bowl that you can prepare for what we do, you can't prepare for who we are. And I'm starting to buy in too, man. They know how to win. 29 in a row, going for a second straight national championship, 3 in 4 years. This is a very appealing national championship game, and we may talk again before it's played. But just your early thoughts on LSU versus Clemson.
Well, I think it's going to be a great final. It's the one I predicted. I just think it's got just so much of a wow factor to it. The two quarterbacks, if they both, came out this year, Burrow would be number one, Trevor would be number two. Just guys who could really sling it, guys who were just strong leaders. Lawrence, both these guys are great with their feet. How much did Trevor Lawrence show you in that Clemson-Ohio State game with that 67-yard run? That was a thing of beauty. And I think, Clemson's defense, Dabo's going to make them rise up to the occasion of handling this LSU offense. So I think LSU might have some issues. It's not going to be a cakewalk like some of their other games have been. I think Clemson's defense is going to bring it. I think it's just going to be a great, great final.
All right, I lied. One final question. Are you surprised? You know him well. You cover him. I'm just shocked. And maybe there have been overtures, but – And I know UAB's thrilled, but I'm still surprised that somebody hasn't plucked Bill Clark away from UAB in the Southeastern Conference. I see some of these guys are hired, and quite frankly, I think Bill Clark's a better football coach than a lot of them.
Gosh, who knows what happens behind the scenes, with this stuff. But I don't know whether, people look and they go, well, yeah, he's done that at UAB, but that's Conference USA school. And they go, let's try to get a coordinator at an SEC school, so if they're comparing the two, but there's no doubt, having covered Bill for a few years, that the guy knows how to motivate players. He knows how to recruit. He knows how to coach up players. There's going to be a point in time where someone is going to hire this guy, and it's going to wind up being a home run hire. Now, nationally, it may not be very sexy. But when a school does hire him, it's going to be a home run hire, and he's going to win big for them.
I'm with you. I think he's a terrific football coach. All right, great stuff, Jeff. You toughed it out for us, man. Are you gonna try to take a day or two off on the air, or are you gonna go try to be on tonight?
I'm sucking down hot tea as quick as I could drink it, so I'll be on the air tonight.
Man, well, our best wishes. What about Sunday night with the Zone? It should be a jam-packed show.
Oh, yeah, it should be. We're looking forward to it. We'll talk a lot about the national championship game and obviously the Citrus and Outback Bowls and, first weekend of the SEC basketball season. So there'll be a lot of things to unpack on Sunday.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Gary.